when I'm done talking, the first thing that you're going to do is to use the tracer rectangles to make your value scales on the paper that I've provided. You need both of them to be on the front side. I'm going to use a regular number 2 pencil because you can't see the 2H over the projector, but you should use your 2H pencil. So what I'm going to do is to just trace around the outside of this rectangle so that I can make a value scale. And then I'm going to go down here and I will do the same thing, just like this. If you'd watch real quick and then do it, I would appreciate it. So we'll trace around like that. And then I'm just going to use the width of the tracer rectangle to make the individual rectangles, just like that. Okay? So we'll get it done just like that, and then make sure you put your name on the front side of this because they will be wet and we'll need to see whose they are. Go ahead and get started. And don't forget to write your name on the front. Appreciate it. And then we shouldn't need the pencils again until we get to the tomatoes. But these are new practices. I'm not sure how long they're going to take and if we'll get to the tomatoes, but I think we'll get to the tomatoes. Okay? So, as you are finishing up, if your little practice looks like my little practice and you're all done, then you can begin to, when I'm done talking, set up to paint with your watercolors. Each person needs an individual water cup. You need your own palette for paint. You will use definitely your larger paintbrush, but you have two. You have a large and a small paintbrush. Each person needs a little cup of water. You'll notice that there are 2 cups in each bin. One is your dirty cup and one is your clean cup, so you don't have to get up and go to the sink in order to clean out your water, right? Remember, you just pour the dirty cup into the dirty cup, and then you can pour new water from the clean cup and just make sure that you've filled up the clean cup at the end of each hour. Each person will also need a length of paper towel. You don't need lots and lots of paper towel, but you need some paper towel, and you just put it on the side over here. So as soon as you're done making your little value scale, you can go ahead and start getting set up. Thank you for your attention. Go ahead and begin. Okay, so if you remember from last year, or just for those of you who were not in my class last year and do not know, you need to keep your palette side, this area closest to you, and then the watercolor further away. You will do all of your mixing in the plastic lid. This keeps your watercolors clean, right? So you need to have your, bless you a lot. So you need to have your little palette so that the mixing part is closest to you. You should keep your water cup above your dominant hand because you will be painting with your dominant hand, right? So it's nice to have the water so that it's easy for you to get to. So you will have your paper towel in your non-dominant hand, and then your paintbrush in your dominant hand, and your water so that you don't have to reach across things to get to it and potentially knock it over. So I'm going to show you what to do to get your paint ready, and then I will give you some time to do it. So go ahead and set your brushes down and look up at the screen. Okay, so go ahead and set your brushes down and look up at the screen. Okay, thank you everyone. So these watercolors are dry cake watercolors, so if I stick my finger in them first thing in the morning, they're all nice and dry, and they can't be used until we get them wet. So in just a minute, and not right now, when I tell you to go, you're going to take a little bit of water just by gently dipping your brush into the water and dripping it just a little bit into the orange. Now we're using orange, honestly, y'all, because I have a whole bunch left over. So we're doing our practices with colors that I have extra of for no reason other than I have extra of them, and you can practice with whatever color. So we're going to do orange and purple because there's lots. Orange is a weak, weeny color, so it's good to practice with a weak one, and then purple is a very strong, bold color with a high concentration of pigment, and it's good to practice with both, right? So what we're going to do is to drip just a couple of drips into the orange, and then just leave it alone. Don't swirl your brush around in it because it'll make your water dirty, it'll make everything dirty, and we're not quite ready for that. Our job today when you're making your value scales is to make sure that you have the concentration of pigment that you want, which means in order to get your value scale to go from light to dark, you have to have just a teeny weeny bit of paint in it over here on the left, and you have to have a lot more on the right. So you have to have control over how much paint is in your brush and how much paint goes into your palette. So I'm going to take, after I drop 2 little drops into my orange, I'm going to take some water and I'm going to do 2 little drops into my water, and then I'm going to just wipe off the brush so that it's kind of dry. After I do that, then I'm going to just get a little tiny tip full of orange and put it into the orange so that it's puddly and runny, just like that. Okay, so you should have a little tiny runny puddle, and I'm going to set my brush down, but you may end up just holding it while you're waiting. Okay, so go ahead, get your brush in the water, use your large brush so that you'll have, yes, that's the large brush, correct. The large brushes are the brand new ones. To answer a question from earlier, you don't have to keep the plastic hat on them. I just didn't take them off. And go ahead and put your brushes down and look up. All right, cool. So what we're gonna do is make sure that you have your paper towel in your non-dominant hand because this is your eraser. And whenever you are painting, if you get stuff extra places, you make a mess, you're gonna use your eraser to clean up the mess and make sure that you clean up your edges with this, either by using the paper towel or by wiping off your paintbrush so that your paintbrush is clean. If your paintbrush is clean, you can use it to clean up tiny errors. But it's hard to get it clean if your paper towel's somewhere over there. But if it's in your hand, you're ready to wipe off the brush and then you can just absorb your mistakes, okay? So it makes it a much more forgiving medium. What you were complaining about at the beginning with your experience with watercolor is that it isn't forgiving. It's hard to come back from it. Once you paint something the wrong color, you don't know how to fix it. When it bleeds together, you don't know how to fix it. And that's all preventable in technique. So make sure that you're able to have that clean paintbrush because you can get tiny little errors corrected with it. So watch me real quick, and I'm going to do the first one and then show you how to do the other ones, and then you'll be able to work on your own. One more time, please make sure the paintbrushes are not in your hand, that they are sat down on the table, and you are listening and watching the screen, please. you. All right, so I got my brush wet because I just wiped it off. If your brush is already wet, you will not need to do that. I'm making sure that my brush is fully loaded. As I load my brush, I'm just gently patting it up and down. If you feel like you should do this, you have done something wrong, okay? Don't do that with your paintbrush, it ruins it. But when you're getting your brush with paint in it, you should just be kind of patting it on the side over there, right? So that it maintains its lovely little shape. And then when we're painting in the light tone, you're just using your larger brush, so not the yellow one, but the blue one with the yellow end. And we want an even light tone that looks something like that. And now, I know that's really hard to see. I promise that there's, like, can you see it a little bit better? It's definitely orange from where I'm standing, but the technology is not perfect, so it's hard to see, but I promise it's orange. After you get your one little guy orange, then you're going to get a little bit more orange from the paint palette and put it into the paint well, and then watch this. Okay, watch this really quick. I hope you're not doing this right now and you have your paintbrushes put down and you are looking at what I'm trying to show you. So when you have stuff on your brush and you're having a hard time getting the paint out, you squeegee, just like this. You let it, set it down like that, and the paint and the water comes out of the brush. So if you're finding that you're trying to put paint in there and put paint in there and put paint in there and put paint in there, and it's freaking taking forever. If you do that, just like this, it'll all squeeze out into your palette, and then you'll be able to have a higher concentration of pigment. It'll help you to be brighter. So I'm going to get that mixed up, and then we have to wait for this to be sort of dry. It doesn't have to be really, really dry, but it's got to be kind of dry in order to paint the next step on there, okay? Go ahead and get started with your lightest tone. Guys, use these brushes. Yeah, you need a lot more. Use your bigger brush because then you won't have brush strokes. We want it to be a flat. So paint down and lift up, paint down and lift up. Your goal is to make an even, flat tone. Okay? So paint down, lift up, paint down, lift up. Don't seesaw back and forth. All right, y'all. When you're doing the next one, you just want to make sure that the first one isn't shiny. If it's shiny, it's really wet and they're going to bleed together. If it's not shiny, if it's dull, then it should be okay to paint next to it. You can also touch it gently if you're not sure. If you're looking at it and it's shiny, don't put your finger in it. Okay, if you put your finger in it, it's going to get messy and it will ruin your nice flat value that you made. But if you're looking at it and you're like, I don't know, and you touch it a little bit, if it's cold, it's wet. If it's not cold, then it's dry. And you should be able to paint next to it, and you can use that while you're doing your painting as well. So I've already made this a brighter concentration of pigment. I'm not going to get my brush wet again. Why won't I get my brush wet again? It's going to make it what? It's going to make it more see-through. It will dilute my paint. It's going to make this concentration of pigment that I made on purpose to be the second step lighter, and it won't change in value. So you need to make sure that your brush is moist. I know we all hate that, but it needs to be a little bit moist, but not dripping. Okay, so if yours is really dry, you can dip it in and then gently wipe it, and that will get it so that it will move the paint around, but it's not going to change your concentration of pigment. So doing the painting is the same as before, but y'all, I want you to watch because I saw a bunch of strange things going on while I was wandering around. So watch me do this really quick, please, and please do it how I show you how to do it because it will make it very, very fast. So you're going to paint down and lift up. You should see that it is visibly a different tone, that it is darker than the first one. If it is not, you need to add more paint. You see how I got this puddle right here? You see this lump right there? I don't want that lump. Do you guys want that lump? No, we want it to be flat. Blot your brush and lift it off. Blot your brush and lift it off. And now it's flat. Does that make sense? I promise mine's a little bit darker. Go ahead and get started. You'll repeat the steps again for the third value. I want you to complete the value scale. I'm just going to kind of talk through this. If you would stay quiet, but you can continue working, it's okay. I've got my brush a little bit wet, but I'm wiping it off because I want this to be bold and bright. So I'm going to get into the pigment so that, like, if you look up, do you see how much paint I got on there? Look at that. She's chunky. I got a big, fat, chunky lump of paint. So I'm going to now put that into this puddly, wet paint. Okay, if yours, when you're painting down here and you're getting your palette ready, if there's lots of palette showing through, lots of white, and it's skipping, then you don't have enough water. When you go to paint down on your value scale, if it's not fluid and liquidy, you aren't using enough water or paint. If it's making a bunch of brush strokes, you're probably using the wrong brush or you're choking it. You know, so you need to make sure that you're holding the brush by the handle and not by the ferrule and paint down. If it's fluid and the watercolor is at the right consistency, you should be able to kind of move it around and get it to be nice and smooth and liquidy and flat, right? So what we want, and it's really hard to see, but I promise that this is a light tone, you want it to have a full step in between each. So it's really light, medium, and then the darkest orange gets. Orange isn't particularly dark, so she's only going to get so dark to begin with. After you get the fourth step, go ahead and rinse off your paintbrush and set it down. Have your attention, please. Alrighty, group. All right, loves. So in just a second, we're going to start with the purple. And when I'm done talking, you're going to be able to do the purple independently because it's exactly the same as the orange, except she is a lot bolder than her orange sister, okay? So she needs only just a wee little bit of pigment in there in order to make the value the same tone, okay? Because she's just a really bold pigment. So watch me real quick, and then you'll be able to work independently. Okay, so if you are holding your brush, set it down. We're going to do water just the same. Because purple is so bold, I do not have to wash my water out because the orange will literally not disturb her. It's almost like I planned this on purpose, right? So I'm going to squeegee that out so there's lots of water in here, and I'm just going to put the very end of the bristles in to get a wee little bit of purple on here. Look at that. So quick, so fast, and she purples right up. So be careful how much purple you put in, because she's going to get bold real fast. And then you just do the same procedure as the orange. You do the light purple, and then you add a little more purple, and then you do the next purple, and then you add a little bit more, and then the next one, and then the next one, with this one being nice and bold and dark. Okay? Does that make sense? Do you have any questions? All right, let's roll. When I'm painting these, I feel like I'm pushing a puddle of water around. She is bold. So if you go to paint her down and you're like, holy mother of dark purple paint, start a new little puddle. Move it over here to another paint well and add more water to it. It's easier to do that than try to add water to lighten her up. Yes, dear? The more water you add, the lighter it gets. But guys, tulip shush. With purple, she's just so bold that if you get it really, really purple over here, you're never going to rescue her. You've got to just move it over into the well and put more water in there. Okay? It's okay to have gotten her too bold, but, you know, don't work extra hard for no reason to get it lighter. Right, look at this. This is super dark. Did you see what I did? Your teacher just now made it way too dark. I did not do that on purpose, but I'm not sad that I did, because I can show you how to make it lighter once you've already painted it down. So with a value scale, I have it all flat, and my goal is to make it nice and flat, right? But I made this way too dark. So I'm going to rinse off my brush and wipe it off, and while it's still wet, I'm going to just lift off the paint, just like that. And then, ta-da, she's nice and light.